But in studying for this psalm the last couple of days, what a refreshment, what an encouragement Psalm 143 is. A lot of truth, a lot of things to ponder. So let me read it for you. Psalm 143, notice that it is a psalm of David. Hear my prayer, O Lord, give ear to my supplications. Answer me in your faithfulness, in your righteousness, and do not enter into judgment with your servant. For in your sight no man living is righteous. For the enemy has persecuted my soul. He has crushed my life to the ground. He has made me dwell in dark places like those who have long been dead. Therefore my spirit is overwhelmed within me. My heart is appalled within me. I remember the days of old. I meditate on all your doings. I muse on the work of your hands. I stretch out my hands to you. My soul longs for you as a parched land. Selah. Answer me quickly, O Lord. My spirit fails. Do not hide your face from me, or I'll become like those who go down to the pit. Let me hear your loving kindness in the morning, for I trust in you. Teach me the way in which I should walk, for to you I lift up my soul. Deliver me, O Lord, from my enemies. I take refuge in you. Teach me to do your will, for you are my God. Let your good spirit lead me on level ground. For the sake of your name, O Lord, revive me. In your righteousness, bring my soul out of trouble. And in your loving kindness, cut off my enemies and destroy all those who afflict my soul, for I am your servant. What a beautiful psalm, and there's a lot of stuff in here. So we'll kind of walk through it, take our time, and look at what we discover along the way. Notice that there are elements of lament, that is sorrow, grieving, complaining even to God. There are elements of rejoicing. There are elements of praise. This is also a petition psalm. David is praying to God. So there's a lot of different kinds of elements in this. And notice in the first two verses that David is saying to God, I'm asking you to answer me. Pay attention, listen to me, answer me. Hear my prayer, O Lord. Give ear to my supplications. Answer me in your faithfulness, in your righteousness. Now, remember that the Psalms are poetry, and there's actually a lot of structure in many Psalms. And one of the things that David is doing here is he's going to set up repeated themes. He's going to talk about things that show up a lot in this, and even bookends. So if you notice the concept of righteousness in verse 1, it shows up again in verse 2, and then it shows up again in verse 11. Righteousness, that is, God always does the right thing. And so David is saying, answer me in your faithfulness. What would that be? What's faithfulness? What do we mean when we say faithfulness?
To walk with the Lord, to always be with Him.
Okay, so be faithful to the Lord means to always walk with Him, to always obey Him. When we talk about the Lord's faithfulness to us, what does that mean? He's dependable. He's reliable. He doesn't say something and then skip out on it after a while. What he says is what he's going to do, and if he says, I'll always be there, then he'll always be there. So that's God's faithfulness. Answer me in your faithfulness, in your righteousness. And that's an interesting thought, that David is calling upon God to answer him in God's righteousness. That because God always does the right thing, because he's always upright, that he will answer. Well, why would that be? Well, it's because God has said, I will answer your prayers. If you're my child, if you belong to me, then I will answer. And so David is calling upon God to follow through on what he's promised. In verse 2, and do not enter into judgment with your servant, for in your sight no man living is righteous. The first line of verse 2, David is saying, do not enter into judgment. That would be condemnation. In other words, if you call me into the courtroom and you're going to hold me accountable, I'm in very serious trouble. So this is, an admission that David is sinful, that is fallible, that he makes mistakes. The second line of verse 2 is actually a very loaded theological statement. It's a deep, profound statement. So look at it again. For in your sight, no man living is righteous. What in the world does David mean by that? We know in other places, for example, even talking about Abraham in Genesis chapter 15, it says Abraham believed God and it was credited to him as righteousness. So Abraham is called a righteous man. So what is David getting at? Well, take a look in Matthew chapter 19. Matthew chapter 19. There is this truth that David seems to be referencing here. And I'm going to look at verse 17. Matthew chapter 19 and verse 17. See if you can connect this to what we just read in Psalm 143. Matthew 19:17. And he, that's Jesus, said to him, the rich young ruler, why are you asking me about what is good? There is only one who is good, but if you wish to enter into life, keep the commandments. And Jesus is referring to God. There's only one who's good. Now, wait a minute. The Bible says there are lots of good men. There are lots of good people. So what does Jesus mean, and what does David mean? Okay, you're right. We're dealing with absolutes. We're dealing with absolute statements. So on a relative scale, if we're going to, remember in grade school when the whole class would mess up on the spelling test and the teacher would graciously say, well, everybody did poorly on this, so we're going to grade on a curve. Remember that? And what that means is nobody got it right. In fact, everybody did pretty bad. But instead of making it take it over, I'm going to let this one go. And what I'm going to do is the top one, the one who got, 8 right out of 20, we'll call that an A. And the one who got 7 right, well, that's a B. So who did good? Nobody did. But on a relative scale, grading on a curve, there were some that did better than others. But when you boil it down to absolutes, when you say, I'm not talking about a bell curve, I'm not talking about grading on a curve, I'm not talking about relatively, this person who only shoplifts is way better than this person who does armed robbery. Leave that aside. Absolutely, who is righteous? Only one, God. So David seems to be talking about that truth, that God is the only one who is absolutely righteous, the only one that is absolutely straight up and down. So back in Psalm 143, for in your sight no man living is righteous. And this, of course, would point out the need. If anybody is going to be able to call God Father, if anybody is going to have a relationship with God, then God has got to intervene. God has to do something because we're never going to make it. We are never going to make it into a relationship with Him based on, well, I'm a lot better than that armed robber over there. I've never held up a store at gunpoint. I've never done that. And God says, no, you're missing the point. The point is perfection, absolute righteousness. And in God's sight, nobody is righteous. But of course, this is where Jesus Christ comes on the scene. And when He died on the cross, He actually arranged, the Father's plan was this, that His perfect righteousness would be transferred to our account. When we believe in Jesus, this is hard for us to even picture, isn't it? When we believe in Jesus, we get a white, shining robe. And when God the Father looks down from heaven, He does not see my sin. How can that even be? I know all about my own sin. I know how wretched I am. But the justification that was carried out by Christ on the cross transferred my sin to his account, and he paid for it fully with his blood. And his righteousness was transferred to my account, and I put that robe on, and now when God looks down, he doesn't see Lawrence Brown with all the filth and the sin and the grime and the grunge of my whole life. He sees his son's perfection. That's what I'm wrapped in. And that's a real thing. It's not pretend. The justification carried out by Christ is a real thing. So this is a profound truth. When David says, no man living is righteous in your sight, he's talking about some deep stuff there. Now look at verse 3. In verses 3 and 4, David is going to talk about the current situation, why he's bowed down, why things are tough for him right now. And he says, for the enemy has persecuted my soul. He has crushed my life to the ground. He has made me dwell in dark places like those who have long been dead. Do you think that David means that he's actually living in a tomb, literally? You're right. There are times when he hid in caves. That's true. I think that he's probably not talking about actually living inside of a tomb. But emotionally, he's conveying, this is what I feel like. Is it okay to talk to God like this? In verse 4, therefore my spirit is overwhelmed within me, my heart is appalled within me. Is it okay to talk to God like that? Yes. We're telling him the truth. We're being honest with him. In fact, it would be wrong to try to do otherwise, wouldn't it? The British used to be famous, I don't know if they still are or not, but they used to be famous for a stiff upper lip. Whatever you throw their way, they're okay with that. That's fine. The problem is when we try to have a stiff upper lip and we're pretending like everything's fine. Your friend calls you on the phone and she says, how are you? And you say, oh, fine, fine. And inside, you're just so hurting. You are in such great emotional trauma, you can't even begin to describe it. Now, why would we try to pretend with God that everything is fine? Why would we try to hide? Makes no sense. So God is okay with us saying to him, Lord, my spirit is crushed. I feel like I'm living in a grave. In fact, I'm stepped on. I'm on the ground and people are stepping on me. And my heart is just horrified. And I'm just filled with shame and I'm filled with terror. And there's nothing good. Nothing is right. Well, it's okay to tell God that. Now, if we start saying to God, and God, you're to blame. You're the one that is doing everything wrong. Well, we crossed a line now. Now we're not so good. God may well allow us to go through tough times. And those tough times are always good. Notice I didn't say pleasant. What's the difference between good and pleasant?
Pleasant is something you enjoy at the time, and good is something more long range that the Lord puts all things together.
There you are. Perfectly. Romans 8:28. It's for our benefit. It's for our good. It's to build us up. It's to make us more like Jesus. It's to give us an opportunity to be a testimony. It's all good. But at the time, it may be very far from pleasant. Pleasant is ice cream and sitting in your nice comfy chair with a fire going, or better yet, going outside and it's 70 degrees and sunshine, right, Sharon? Yeah. But unpleasant is what David is talking about. So this is his complaint. This is where he's at. And I don't mean complaint as in he's groaning against God. He's being honest and saying, Lord, this is where I'm at. This is what it feels like. Now, in verses 5 and 6, David is going to do two things in response to his circumstances. See if you can figure out what they are. In verse 5, I remember the days of old. I meditate on all your doings. I muse on the work of your hands. And in verse 6, I stretch out my hands to you. My soul longs for you as a parched land. So there's one thing in verse 5 and one thing in verse 6 that he does. What's the thing in verse 5? So he's meditating, he's remembering, he's musing on God's grace and God's great power, not only to him personally, but down through history. He's thinking, I remember the stories when I was a kid. I remember reading the Bible about Moses and the Exodus and the children of Israel in slavery in Egypt. And then God sent his man and the plagues of Egypt and the fire of the pillar of fire and cloud leading the children of Israel out of Egypt into freedom. I remember that, he says. I remember the Red Sea parting. I've read that story. I know that story. God did that. So he's meditating on what God has done in the past. God's great power, God's great mercy and grace intervening on behalf of his people. That's a good thing to do. We all too often start meditating and musing and remembering, but we tend to remember and muse, oh, how awful this is. This is so miserable. In fact, I've been miserable a long time. And we instead of thinking about God, instead of thinking about God's deliverance and God's power and his promises, we meditate on how miserable we are and on how miserable we've been. We have this elongated suffering, pity party kind of a thing going on all too often. And instead of looking to God, we look inside our own souls and we say, I am so miserable. I am so sad. Well, it's like a long tunnel. It gets narrower and narrower and narrower. And by the end, you're just a little blubbering mass. So the first thing he does is meditate on God's power, God's promises, his intervention, his grace. What's the second thing he does in verse 6? He reaches out to the Lord in prayer. So the idea of stretching out my hand seems to be in prayer. Lord, I'm reaching for you. I'm reaching out to you. I could tell you about a few times in my life when things seemed pretty dark, pretty grim. And upon thinking, upon pondering where I'm at and what's going on in my life, I come to realize, I gotta talk to God. And some of those times of great grief and sorrow and darkness resulted in some of the most effective, powerful, meaningful prayer episodes in my entire life, where I'm kind of at the bottom of a very deep pit. And like David, I'm just saying, Lord, I don't even know where to go or what to do. My life is just, I am a mess. And I don't have any answer. I don't have any solutions. I don't know what to do. But I'm stretching out my hands to you. I'm turning to you. I need you to help me. I need you to give me some wisdom. I need you to direct me. And it's got to come from you because I got nothing. I can't create my own happy feelings. I need you to do it. That is what David is doing. And if you have walked with the Lord for any length of time, you know what I'm talking about. And you know that those times of prayer when we are utterly despondent and therefore utterly dependent on God are some of the most meaningful times in our entire lives. Well, that's where he's at. Verse 7, answer me quickly, O Lord, my spirit fails. Do not hide your face from me. or I will become like those who go down to the pit. So he's saying, Lord, I need you to intervene. I need you now. In verse 8, let me hear your loving kindness in the morning, for I trust in you. So the picture I get is it's nighttime. It's dark. Things are not going well. He's in a tough spot. And he's saying, Lord, I'm pouring out my soul to you. I'm asking you to intervene. And in the morning, I'd like to hear the birds singing. And I'd like to know you're there and you've got this all in hand. This is not too big for you. This is not too powerful for you. And I'm waiting to hear your loving kindness, your mercy, your faithfulness, your grace, singing to me when the sun starts to come up in the morning. And he says, because I trust in you. Those are powerful words. Because I trust in you. Those are good words to remember. Now he asked God to teach him in the middle of verse 8, teach me the way in which I should walk, for to you I lift up my soul. So he's asking God, show me, direct me, give me the information I need. Which road do I choose? Where do I go? How do I handle this? And in verse 9, deliver me, O Lord, from my enemies. I take refuge in you. So deliverance. I need help. The enemies are trying to get me. Verse 10, compare for a moment in the middle of verse 8, teach me the way in which I should walk. And in verse 10, teach me to do your will. What's the difference between the two? What's in verse 8? What is that asking God to do for David?
To help us in our day-to-day life.
Okay. So show me, give me the knowledge, instruct me. In verse 10, what is David asking God to do? There it is. Teach me to do your will. Interesting. Sometimes, we ask God for help, and we do it something like this. Lord, I'm in a tough spot, and I really need direction. I need you to show me what to do. And so you show me, is it A or B, or whatever it is, and I'll do it. In fact, Lord, you show me A or B, and then I'll decide which one I like. If A is maybe a little tougher, then I might choose B. And if B looks like it could be a little less desirable, then I'll probably pick A. But you show me. Well, no, wait a minute. Something happened. So David is asking both for the knowledge of God's will. What do you want me to do? Show me. And then he's saying, Lord, help me to do it. Because one of the most serious mistakes we make is to put ourselves in the place of judging what we think we want to do. And we're never better off than when we just acknowledge, Lord, you're the Father, I'm the child, and I'm happy with whatever you decide for me. You pick, and I'll just do it. It's when we start putting on airs. It's when we start, feeling kind of important. It's when we start saying, Lord, give me a choice here, you pick A or B, and then I'll decide which one I like. Nah. So David says, Lord, teach me to know the path. Show me the information, the knowledge, the instruction. But then, additionally, teach me to do it. Teach me to just obey. When you've shown me what your will is, help me to not argue. Help me to not rebel. Help me not to complain or grumble. Help me to just do it. For you are my God. Let your good spirit lead me on level ground. So David is claiming personal relationship with God. He's claiming that the Spirit of God is leading him, and is asking, lead me on level ground, meaning make the path clear, easy, discernible. Show me. Make it so that I can't miss it. Help me. Verse 11, for the sake of your name, O Lord, revive me. Here's another mistake we sometimes make. When we're in darkness, when we're in a tough spot, we sometimes start feeling like because of my sorrow, because of my difficulties, I am the most important person alive right now, and Lord, you got to help me. And we kind of get self-absorbed. David, in the middle of his struggles, in the middle of his sorrows, he's wise enough to say, for the sake of your name, Lord, you've got big stuff going on, and I know I'm a part of it. I'm just a small part of it, but I'm a part of it. And so whatever you're doing in my life, in everybody's life, give me the grace I need, give me the strength I need, so that your name is glorified, so that you are magnified, so that people acknowledge who you are. In your righteousness, there's that righteousness again, bring my soul out of trouble, and in your loving kindness, cut off my enemies and destroy all those who afflict my soul, for I am your servant. So David concludes by saying, I need you to revive me, bring me out of trouble, deal with my enemies. And once again, he says, I am dependent on you. I'm your servant. I have a personal relationship with you. I am depending on you. I'm waiting on you. You're the master. I'm the servant. Questions or comments on Psalm 143? Beautiful psalm. A lot of theology. Okay, so if you'll take your prayer bulletins, let me share with you some things.